Hi, everybody. I hope you're doing well. I have a client today, so I thought I would take you along for the ride. We need to stop at Wawa, though. For real. I need a cup of coffee. Okay. So, I'm also wanting to test out this. Oh, well, they call this a dead cat. I don't like that, but it's one of those toppings for your mic that, I guess I have to go that way. Sorry, more construction every time. I don't even know what they're doing really, but anyway, flaggers up there. Should have left a little earlier, but that's okay. We're still going to get coffee. So the reason I had swapped that out for the foam topping is because I did notice on the road there's a lot of static, and I suspect that is the microphone rubbing against my shirt, as we go through bumps and stuff. So I thought I would test this out because the little furry fibers probably keep it from rubbing directly against. So we'll see how this works. Now I just turned the air on. It's supposed to be like not even 70 today. Maybe that would be the high. So I wore a sweater, a really thin sweater, and I wore boots. It's boot weather. I love that. But I'm putting the air on, so that's not good. So I'm kind of thinking maybe I pushed it a little bit, but that could just be me. Yay, we're going through. Yay. All right. So what I wanted to talk to you about today is that, my background is that I've done a lot of mentoring for people who wanted to develop their gifts, and also have done years of workshops to get small groups, going on their journey. And then some of them I mentor afterwards, and some of them I don't, but it's a very popular class that obviously I don't offer anymore. And that's kind of sad. I mean, I do miss it. I really do. But this is about not wanting to cancel on people when I don't feel well. And even when I go see a client, it's not for clients. It is what I know I can handle as long as I wake up feeling well to begin with. Okay, so I know this is not my cancer channel. Sorry about that. This is my woo-woo channel. So a lot of people have sent me questions about developing their own intuition, mediumship, like how do we do that? Do we need to meditate? Well, yes and no. There's lots of forms of meditation. Yes, you need to meditate, but you can also just do it by being in a quiet place, still, kind of a serene surroundings. You set the stage, but I'll go over the different types of meditations in a while. But right now I need coffee. I'll be back. Hi again. I made it to the office. Got my coffee. Makes me happy. 75% of it is decaf, but it's hazelnut. So I can't complain. It is yummy. Okay, so what I want to do today is go over some of the basics. And then at some point in the future, I can also do another video where we can practice stuff. But for today, we're going to keep it simple. So the goal is to connect. It's connecting either with your spirit guides or, maybe not your loved ones. That's harder to do, but not impossible. But I have a hard time connecting. I think it's because there's an emotional connection with that. And I find it easier to connect to someone else's loved ones. Now, the goal is raising your vibration. That might be a term that you're familiar with. When I connect with a client, we're having this conversation back and forth, and my goal is to raise the vibration so that we can all connect. So we're making a little conference call by raising the vibration in the middle. And I promise new people, my head's not going to spin around. My eyes don't change color. I can sometimes take on a little bit of a different mannerism depending on the personality that I'm connecting with. But today we just want to talk about the basics of connection. And the best way to raise your vibrations is absolutely meditation. But there's lots of different kinds of meditation. So as I've mentioned before, not everybody, for one reason or another, can really zone out that far. And that's okay. It's about practice. So if you feel like you're not getting kind of like where you really want to be, you might be. You just need to do it a little more often. So guided meditation, that's one of my go-tos for a new person to this. Because when you meditate and you just there's lots of them, but let's say it's staring into a candle, so you've got a candle flame, it's kind of dark in the room, and you sit there and you're staring at it. That's like a silent meditation where you try to get all of your thoughts out of your head, and that's a good one. However, when you're new, what you're doing is staring at this candle and thinking, did I take the chicken out of the freezer for dinner? There's always these things happening. Even, I don't hear a voice. What voice? Does a voice. So there's nothing wrong with that. It just takes practice and patience. And that is one thing that I can't teach. So many people give up because they're not as dedicated as they thought. They didn't realize how much it does take to develop. And, they have other lives. They've got their earth life to deal with. And sometimes people cannot make that time. But I'm going to tell you right now, it takes what it takes. And we might be talking a couple of years. It just wasn't, for me, it was a calling. I didn't wake up one morning and say, well, I think I'm just going to do readings. It took a long time to develop. And I have no regrets for putting in the work, because that was my calling. That was the career that I really wanted and felt that was meant for me. And some people don't even find that realization until they're in their 40s. So don't sell yourself short. Don't prejudge yourself like, oh, I wouldn't be good at that. Take away all those negatives. And maybe your goal is just, I would just like to make better decisions in my life. I'd like to read people before I let them in. That is the most valuable tool you can have. because we're all born with that gift. Sitting still, getting out of your own way. That's when God speaks. That's when spirit motivates you. And you feel so much better. You feel more aligned in the mind, the body, and the spirit. So I would recommend maybe getting an app online, getting a guided meditation, and it doesn't matter what the goal of the meditation is. You're still going to go to the same place. And what I mean by that is this more of a yoga meditation? Or is this more of, I want to learn about my past lives meditation? It doesn't matter. Meditation is meditation. It's just about where that voice takes you once you get a little bit more, a little deeper. So I think it's important that you start slow, give yourself a break. This is like a marathon, not a sprint. It's not a race. You absolutely need to be patient with this process. Okay. Now, I'm also going to give you some advice for those of you that feel like you need a mentor, but you don't have one because there's not that many anymore. There's not, and I question some of the ones that do exist. However, I think intentions are everything. I think that's fine. You have to use your own intuition on who you choose for that. But I'm going to make a suggestion for newbies. Go to hayhouse.com, and they have a lot of courses online, a lot of, do it at your own pace videos. I'm specifically going to recommend James Van Praagh, and I'll put the name on the screen. I think he has put out a lot of good courses through Hay House, and I don't think they're all that expensive either, where a mentor could definitely be an expense. I mean, we come in all shapes, forms, and sizes and rates, and depending on where you are, how popular you are. But I think that going at your own pace is key, and you're not limited to time and space here. You're not limited to what you have available in your area. So think outside the box. If you live in some remote desert, don't worry about it. You just have to have internet. This is a good stopping place for me. I just saw my client drive in, so I'm going to take care of that and give her a really good reading, and I'll come back in the next clip. I flap my gums so much that my lips dry out. They're just like blowing in the breeze. All right, that was good. I always feel like there's a success if someone has to use a tissue. That's how I measure success, that I made people cry. Okay, I want to close out the meditation portion here to say there's all kinds of meditations. I suggested, a good one for beginners, but sometimes it's just a matter of sitting still. Sometimes there are mindless meditations like cleaning. A lot of people get messages while they're scrubbing the tub, believe it or not. It is a form of meditation because there's a mindless about it. Like, you got to get out of your own way. So sometimes when you're just focusing on a back and forth with a scrub daddy or on something, then, you're not thinking about taking the chicken out of the freezer, for instance. And so people that do mindless things, even for work, often develop that way unknowingly. And everybody's gifts start at a different place. Some people just have this natural open gift that they just want to enhance. And some people, we got to start with reinventing the wheel, but that's just the way it is. But everyone should do this. Everyone. It's so good to be, aligned, mind, body, and spirit. That makes you healthy. Okay. And even if you were to take that course or any course at Hay House, like James Van Prague's courses, I've taken a couple, even as recently as 2 years ago. And sometimes you just need a refresher. But I did notice he also teaches meditation and good techniques. So I cannot do my workshop here. It's too long. Like my workshop usually starts with like a half a day, and that'll be way too exhausting for me. So I can only point you in certain directions. The other thing is read books. It doesn't have to be a specific author that I'm going to tell you about, but go to a bookshelf at Barnes and Nobles and let something pick you. There are some really good authors, very informative ways to enhance your gifts. And then it just becomes practice. So I'm going to start driving because I'll never get home this way. And maybe I can give you a few practice tips. When I start with someone in private mentoring, I will often give them homework to do some exercises with. And one way when I talk about practicing is, let's say you're going to a doctor's office or a place you've never been. When you get into the parking lot, I want you to sit still for maybe 60 seconds. And then I want you to think about what the inside of that office looks like. Picture all the details. Picture the first person that's going to greet you. Just actually like put all the details together. It's just your imagination. And there's nothing wrong with imagination. It's how we start. So I want you to think about, is it a male or a female or non-binary? Who's going to greet you there? What color are they wearing? Or in this place, is there a uniform? Just the colors of the walls. And the way you see it, I will give you an example of how I see things, at least in my head, because everything can start with imagination. There is nothing wrong with that. And then you start questioning, was that real or was it not? After a while, you'll stop questioning that. So I want you, and I will not be doing this because I'm driving, but I want you to shut your eyes for a minute. Not 60 seconds. I just want you to shut your eyes and listen to my voice. I want you to imagine that you're in your bathroom, the one that you got washed up in this morning and brushed your teeth. And you've been in your bathroom hundreds of times, maybe more. And I want you to imagine where your towels are, what color they are. I want you to just sort of in your head do a 360. See your bathtub or your shower. Look at the color of the walls. Think about where your toothbrush is, your countertop, everything that's on the counter. And then open your eyes. That's the way I see. That's the way I see places. That's the way I see people. So that's a meditation in itself. But I want you to sort of see that in a place you've never been before. So there you go. That's an exercise. Another thing that you could do is you can make flashcards if you don't have any. You can put like circles on them and fill them in with different colors. You can make different symbols, one on each card, and then you can practice what card is going to come up. And you could even do this with playing cards. Start with whether it's red or black, and then you can start looking at, okay, I feel like this is a number between 2 and 6, and just start practicing that. The chances are that it can be frustrating if you don't get a bunch of wins, but it is a good way to exercise that imagination muscle. And then I would also suggest, when you're ready, or you could do it now, to go online or go to Barnes & Noble and pick out an oracle deck. And I would not suggest tarot because that takes a long time to learn. But get that oracle deck. Treat that like the flashcards as well, as far as what card is coming up. But that's not the main reason I want you to do this. Just do a simple deck that you're attracted to, whether it's a Native American deck or, they have lots of topics that they make decks with. And I want you to learn how to use them. Just go by the textbook, and I want you to practice them and do little readings for yourself, even if it's just like a 1-question reading, or I need to know more about this topic. I mean, there's bazillions of choices out there. My deck that I used to sell on Amazon is no longer available because I retired the Aoshi cards. But there are wonderful angel cards. There's just like all kinds, whatever you're attracted to. And I want you to get proficient enough to maybe do little mini readings for your friends. And what I like about this is that you don't have to use your intuition per se. So if you make a prediction for someone, you're not feeling that kind of pressure. It's like, oh, I didn't predict it. This is what the cards say. Let me look that up, and this is what they say. And taking that pressure off yourself to be right or wrong is enormous, because everything that blocks you is in the ego. And the ego has no place in spirit and spiritual realms. The ego is absolutely a human trait and absolutely only belongs on the earth plane. It has its place, but not with what we're doing, because the ego is constantly interrupting you. I think it's in Buddhism, we call it the monkey mind. It just, it's OCD thinking. But the ego is like the inner child that we let run amok. And so every time your own thoughts interject, you've got to push it away. And I'll give you an example of that. I had a friend who had 2 job offers, and she asked me, which one should I take? Well, first of all, I never tell anybody what to do unless they're in some kind of a danger or whatever that I feel the consequences would be dire. But what I thought was, And I use the word thought, which has no place in a reading either. It's feelings that have the place in the reading. But what I first thought was, oh, that job she wouldn't like. And the other one, I don't think she'd be very good at. So I end up telling her neither one really would suit you. And I really had no business doing that. I don't think she took either one. But if a stranger asked me the same question, someone I have no idea of and nobody that I've ever met asks me, I got 2 job offers, which one shall I take? My answer is not going to come from the ego because I don't know anything about this person. And it's going to be a much healthier answer and probably a little bit more accurate. Now, even in that case, I never tell somebody what to do. I will say, well, there are a couple of things to consider about these positions, and I will show that person what's behind each door. And sometimes I'll make it pretty obvious that, this job's going to be much better than that, but I don't want to take those responsibilities. I have my own karma. I don't need to get on the other side and have the big scroll saying, well, let's see here. In 2014, you told Mrs. Johnson that she would be good with a dog, and the dog bit her. So I don't want to pay for that. This takes that responsibility out of your lap anyway. And so I'm a big advocate for cards. I do cards as part of my longer readings, but I don't do just card readings. I used to have a special every year that I would do your end of year cards that would essentially show you what the next year brings, but I don't do that anymore either. So I think that if you look around the internet, if you do some searching and see how much time you can devote and how you want to learn and who you want to learn from, that's your first step. So these are the basics, and I'm going to leave it there. I think that, I don't want to say you're on your own, but if you have any comments about this or questions, I need to do a Q&A soon, I think. And if you have questions about this as you're going along, just leave them in the comments, and I will, even if it's a comment from, a previous video, I still get to see them. So I try to make sure I don't miss any. So do that. I'd be happy to answer them in a future video. And I hope this gave you a sense as far as where to start. All right. Thank you so much. Have a fabulous day, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.